Hey guys, we are super excited. We have a guest at the tea farm today. We have Jackson from Zingerman's. He's going to tell us all about where he's from and what he has going on in the Zingerman's. And you guys all know the lovely Timmy from the tea farm here. But we're going to have a chat and we're going to talk about what Zingerman's has. They have, first off, they have Timmy's tea. But they also have this amazing lineup of products, and we're going to talk about them, and specifically cheese pairing, and tea. We're going to talk about all kinds of great stuff today that we're really excited about. So first off, Jackson, where are you from? Tell us a little bit about Zingerman's. Get us started.
So I'm from Ann Arbor. Well, okay, not really. I'm from Whitmore Lake, which is the tiny town just north of Ann Arbor, but I live in Ann Arbor, and that's where Zingerman's is. That's also where the University of Michigan is, which is really why most people know Ann Arbor. And Zingerman's is kind of an interesting thing. We started as a Jewish deli in 1982, started by Ari and Paul, and as they grew, they decided to, instead of trying to replicate the same idea over and over again, they wanted to work with other partners and create a business that would work within kind of a community idea. So as we grew, we started opening new businesses with other partners. First a bakery, Zingerman's Bakehouse. We've opened Zingerman's Mail Order that ships food nationwide. And today we have 12 businesses in Washtenaw County that do a number of different things. And our guiding kind of light is we celebrate food that is traditionally made and full flavored. So today I brought a few goodies from home to share with Timmy and everyone here. We've got some bread. This is the farm bread from Zingerman's Bakehouse, kind of the core of a lot of our beautiful breads. It's a traditionally made, naturally leavened bread with freshly milled flour. And I've got some amazing cheeses that we have at the counter at Zingerman's Deli, where I work. So I've got 3 different cheeses from Wisconsin and then 2 from Europe. So we've got this one here, which is a goat's milk cheese from Blakesville Creamery in Port Washington, Wisconsin. It's their cheese called Saint Germain. It reminds me a lot of cheeses from Catalonia. So if you've ever had Garrocha from Spain, this might kind of float your boat. It's delicious. We've also got Willie Lehner's Bluemont Cheddar, or Lehner's Cheddar. It's a really classic English style cheddar that's made in Wisconsin. Willie is a one-man show. He makes the cheese, he ages the cheese in a cheese cave that he built under his house, and he's obsessive about it. It's also an unbelievably good cheese that Jason here at the tea farm can't get enough of, so I have to make sure we send him some more. Over here from Europe, we've got the Kirkham's Lancashire, which is a traditional English cheese from Lancashire and the Kirkham family. It's one of those few traditionally made Lancashires still being produced, and we get this from our friends at Neal's Yard Dairy of London, who do this selection in affinage and then ship it to us. This cheese over here is called L'Etiva d'Alpage. So this is a cheese from the Swiss Alps. It's like Gruyere, but even more special. This one is a cheese that's only made in the late spring or early summer when the cows can go up and graze on the Alpage, the high mountain pastures. And because they're eating lots of grasses and flowers and herbs, the flavor of the milk is much more intense, and therefore the cheese flavor is much more intense. And unlike Gruyere that can get a little bit more on the kind of the funky and nutty side, this cheese is incredibly floral. So to have with a sort of a floral tea, it felt like the most natural pairing. And lastly, but definitely not leastly, is Pleasant Ridge Reserve, which I would consider one of the most important cheeses that we carry. This is also made in Wisconsin, like the other 2 that we talked about earlier, but this is a cheese where we have an incredibly special relationship with the cheesemaker. Every year, we hand select the batches that we get by tasting through a number, and then we pick out the few that we get every year. We actually just did the batch selection before I left, just a couple of days. And then we buy the entirety of that batch. No one else in the country gets access to the batches that we select. They're aged out and sold only to us. So if you want them, they're only going to be at our counter or through our Zingerman's Mail Order Company. This cheese is only made in the summer. It's from a single herd of cows. It's produced from raw milk, and it's only made when the cows are grazing. The deep golden color of this cheese, and also in the L'Etiva, is indicative that the cows were eating lots of fresh grass that had lots of beta carotene in it. When the cows stop eating as much grass, the milk becomes lighter and the cheese becomes less golden. It's more of like a pale yellow or almost a white color. You'll also see that this goat's milk cheese is a very bright white, and that's because goats don't pass beta carotene into their milk the way the cows do.
So you're pairing it today with what? What are we drinking for tea?
Well, over here I've got a little bit of the Mississippi Belle, which is a tea that we don't carry at Zingerman's Deli currently, but I think that might change this year based on how much I've been enjoying it here. And then the other one that Timmy's got is an iced version of the Black Magnolia, which we do carry at the deli.
Awesome. Timmy, tell us about your teas, because we've got tea followers obviously here, but tea and cheese kind of go together nicely,
Yes.
right? So, what do you think about tea and cheese?
So tea and cheese is one of the big things that it's been around for a very long time. Back when they did high teas and everything, and that tea time meant something. They usually had little sandwiches and cheese trays and stuff like that, because cheese and tea has always really gone well together. Because just like Jackson was talking about, this cheese has these floral notes and these everything else, so that naturally is going to pair with an oolong, or like our black orchid when it's able to be made again this fall. And that would lend to itself. So, but there are some other things when it comes to cheeses, which I think Jackson's going to talk about, of how you actually, what you look for to pair what cheese with what tea. So doing all of that, you can figure out kind of what tea goes better with this cheese. And because just like with chocolate, it doesn't pair with every tea, so you need to know what is going to happen better. Not so much in cheese. Some things aren't going to be like disgusting, when you try to pair it with the tea, but it's not going to be as flavorful or as enjoyable.
Yeah. What I'm hearing, there's lots of similarities between tea and cheese. There's kind of similarities with things like the notes and that. Is that correct?
Sometimes some of the flavors that you'll taste in tea, you'll also experience in a cheese. A lot of times, some of the fruity or like the floral flavors, you'll find in both. And that's up to there's a lot of things, like like so many things in specialty food. It depends. There are so many factors that go into creating an amazing cheese. But just like with the tea, it starts in the field or in the cow or in the goat. The quality of the raw leaf that goes into the tea is also just the same idea of like the quality of the milk that goes into the cheese. So, I talked at length about what the cows were eating and where they were grazing about these cheeses, and that has a direct impact on the flavor of the milk and the final product of the cheese. So when cows eat lots of flowers and herbs and grasses, you tend to get a cheese that is more floral in its flavor. And when they eat more savory things, like if they eat a lot of wild garlic or onions, you will taste that in the milk too. And so kind of thinking about that, of where the product starts, or where the the tea or the milk starts and how it ends up, every detail along that path matters and can influence the flavor. And tea and cheese are also ancient foods. Like, we've been eating them for thousands of years. And in many ways, the production of them there are some processes that are overlapping or use some of the same techniques. So not all teas, but many teas involve some step of fermentation to produce the flavors. Like certain dark teas that are aged, or yellow tea undergoes a very short kind of fermentation step. And that's also what cheese is. Cheese is a fermented food. It's milk that has been fermented in a way to preserve it so that we can keep it around for a long time. And in a way, tea is another thing where we're taking a fresh leaf that could be used as a fresh leaf, but we're changing it through many processes in a way to make it more delicious, but also to keep it around for a long time so that we can have it when the tea is not in season. And so there are many foods like this where we've created them as a way to preserve them because the refrigerator didn't exist. Other methods of preservation didn't exist. So we needed to find a way to have this food all the time. In the modern era, we have the luxury of many, things like refrigerators and ways to keep food fresh. But we found that a lot of these traditional foods that we've grown up with, as humans for thousands of years, are still amazing and delicious. And even though we don't have to preserve milk this way, we can refrigerate it. Cheese is so incredibly delicious, and it's also well, for some people, it can be literally addictive. It does stimulate for some people, it does stimulate the same parts of your brain that are addictive. So when some people say that they're cheese addicts, they might not actually be joking.
Is that the same for tea?
I don't know about tea. I don't know. Maybe.
You can be addicted to anything.
That's
Right.
true. Yeah, you can form a habit around anything. But so let's talk about how do we pair tea and cheese. There's kind of two approaches. There's the idea of kind of an additive sort of thing where you're taking the same flavors and you want them to kind of combine and become stronger together. So a floral tea with a floral cheese will you'll get the different flower notes together and they'll become stronger. Sometimes you want to have a contrast where the flavor in the cheese is very different from the flavor in the tea, but together they kind of bring each other further apart and you can taste them both more distinctly. So I would also say that, there's not a wrong or right answer. Because it's food, it's also about your personal preference. We always talk about in the tea world of here's how you make a perfect cup of tea. But that's also really just a starting point of where we think it tastes great. But at the end of the day, you're going to be eating it or making it at home, and you should make it delicious for you. And I would encourage you to experiment, try a cheese with a tea. And if you like it, maybe that's a pairing for you. And you might try something that I recommend and you hate it. And that doesn't mean that you're wrong. It just means that it's not for you. So the more you can try, the more you might find and discover things that are surprising, often in a really pleasant way.
So really quick, me and Jolene have this conversation about tea all the time.
Just going there. Yeah.
Just all the time. And she'll ask me, she's like, well, somebody asked how to make the perfect cup of tea. And I'm like, well, it
depends.
It depends. And basically, and I give them the same spiel, if it's a tea that you like, you find how you want it steeped, the temperature, water, everything, and maybe, we always tell you, a teaspoon or 2.5 grams is good for 8-ounce cup of, tea. Well, maybe you want it a little bit stronger, so you do 3 grams or a teaspoon and a half or, whatever. Mm-hmm. So play with it. That's always been our biggest thing with tea as well, is play with it, find what you like. Our bag instructions are just exactly what you said. Our suggestion of where we think is the best thing and what we have found works better for us.
And let's be real, everyone experiences taste and smell differently. What I taste in this cheese and in this tea is going to be maybe similar, but not exactly the same to what you taste. And so what I find enjoyable might be slightly different from that. And so never being afraid to find your own pairings that are just blow you out of the water. You don't have to be held to convention. Although there might be some starting points of this probably won't be good, but maybe if you try it and you love it, you might have discovered something incredible for yourself. This is my favorite pairing so far has been this one, the Pleasant Ridge Reserve, with honestly either of these teas, because there's floral notes in both of them, and this cheese has sort of a floral side. It's a little sweet. Sometimes you'll get sort of a tropical fruit note from certain batches, almost like a pineapple or a papaya. But right now it's just kind of nutty, sweet, unctuous, top notes of flowers.
And what was that name again?
Oh, this is Pleasant Ridge Reserve.
Pleasant Ridge Reserve.
Yep, Pleasant Ridge Reserve. It's from the Uplands Cheese Company in Dodgeville, Wisconsin, and led by cheesemaker Andy Hatch.
Nice.
We have a very, like I said, we have a very deep connection. We send people out to the farm every year for part of the batch selection. And actually one of our managers at Zingerman's worked there for many years while his now fiance was in law school. He worked at the farm and he made this cheese and their winter cheese, Rush Creek Reserve, for a few years. So he has a very intimate knowledge of how this cheese is produced. Actually, this just reminded me of something. We were talking about the little details that matter. And this cheese, when it is made, it is aged exclusively on cedar wood boards. No other wood can be used to produce the flavor for this cheese, so it has to be aged on cedar. I bring this up because one of the steps in tea making for one of the teas, the Mississippi Queen, is steaming. Part of the process in the steamer is that there is a little bit of cedar infused into the steam, because on the original production of the tea, it involved, there was some cedar in the basket that was used to steam the tea. And when Timmy told me that we moved to a larger steamer, the flavor had changed, and you were trying to think, like, what variable have we altered other than the steam? And it was that small amount of cedar infused into the steam that was giving a signature flavor to the tea that was unique. And so that's just one of those little tiny points of what makes something special. It can be literally just like, it needs to be this kind of wood involved in the process on top of everything else. So amazing.
Timmy's very used to that. There's
Yes.
a simple change. Well, really, wasn't it kind of a surprise to make? Well, it wasn't really a surprise. You knew what you're doing, but it was quite the test to make that very special black orchid tea. Like, and that was a very simple, not a simple change, but it was a change in your processing that
Yes.
brought out.
And that was, and basically, Jason brought it up yesterday. So I remember, Phil was here when we did the first batch of it. And he was actually the one that helped us develop it in the beginning. Because he was here, and it was his idea. He's like, I want to do a floral black tea, and he was like, okay, well, let's see if we can figure it out.
Yeah.
So he had the very first batch of it that he took back to Canada, and then later on in the fall, we decided to give it another go round and do it again, and it worked out exactly the same way. And we tried it this fall, or this spring, to see if we could do it, and it was not a possibility in the spring. I don't know if it's just not enough sunlight yet, or if it's what's in the leaf in the beginning of the year that just doesn't make it happen. So I mean, once again, it depends on what's there.
Yeah.
So we figured out it's only going to be a fall one. But yeah, it was just a trial and error, a little tiny change to something that we do to create something completely different.
Hey, Jackson, you were talking about your relationship with your producers, and like you have a really special relationship with them. And that's actually very apparent to us, because here you are all the way in Mississippi. You're actually in Mississippi for your first time visiting Timmy and the tea farm and Jason and all of them. Tell us, first off, what was your first impressions, coming out to a tea farm? What's your experience been like?
Well, I've never been to a tea farm before, so this is my first visit to a tea farm as well.
Yes.
It's not like there are that many in the United States, so otherwise I would have had to travel a very long distance to India or China or Sri Lanka or Kenya, which are all very, very far away. And as Mississippi is not close to Michigan, it's a lot closer than any of those places. So this is my first time in Mississippi. I flew into Jackson Airport, which was much smaller than I expected. And I was one of the very few people who was there when I flew in on Tuesday morning. But it made it really easy to, get through the airport, get my bags, get my rental car. And the drive here is just over an hour from the Jackson Airport. It was absolutely gorgeous. In Michigan, this time of the year, everything is about a month behind. So all of the trees are just starting to push their leaves out. It still kind of looks like a weird winter scene where, there's spring flowers up. Some of the bushes have leaves, but a lot of them are not really fully out. As opposed to here, things are lush. The drive between the airport and Brookhaven is pretty much all woods and like farm fields, and it just looks like this gorgeous green jungle. One weird thing that I noticed is that everywhere you go, the color of the roads is different because the material that they make them with is different in every state. So in Mississippi, all the roads that I noticed, at least flying in, have this brown tint that we don't have in Michigan because they're using a different gravel and a different aggregate. Okay, fair enough. My dad worked in road construction for years, so I grew up talking about paving roads at the dinner table, and so this is something that I notice when I go places because it's something that I was raised with. but I just thought it was really interesting because, you know, you go out to like Nebraska or other places where they have lots of like red clay, and the roads are red because they use lots of things that are red in the roads. So just another one of those weird things. But this beautiful, just like lush garden of just, you know, this tunnel of trees and wildflowers to get here. And I guess I thought there would be more cities between Jackson and Brookhaven, and there's really not much of anything. And then you get out here, you get out on the highway, wind down a country road for a few miles, and you're here at the farm. And I guess I thought also, I knew it was small, but it's somehow even smaller than I anticipated. So it's just, I don't know, I pulled in, I saw the tea farm, I saw the sign, I said, oh God, I'm at the right place. So I called Timmy and we got together and I settled in. But I don't know, it's just fantastic. The first thing I did is just kind of like wander around and just look at the tea plants and, you know, feel the leaves and all that, because, you know, you think about it, you hear about it, and, you know, I wanted to be here. So, actually, why am I here? It's not just for me to have fun and to, you know, entertain myself with my love of tea. That is part of it, but that's going to sound really bad. That is part of it, but we believe in having really deep relationships with our producers. So, like I said, with the Pleasant Ridge Reserve, where we hand select the batches with the cheesemaker, and then we are allowed to have only what we want. With Willie, like, we send people out to see him every year, where they go to his house and they, you know, to go hang out and see his cheese cave and all that. With this cheese, the Lancashire, this is from Neal's Yard Dairy of London. We were their first client in the United States. So we've been carrying their cheese as long as we could since they started exporting their stuff. And every year we've, you know, in years past, we've had people that have staged on both sides of the Atlantic. So we've had people that worked over there in their cheese shop. We've had people that come over from England and work in our cheese shop. And let me tell you, someone with an English accent behind the cheese counter sells so much cheese. Americans just melt for an English accent, and, you know, we can't help it. So in that vein, we really believe that a deep relationship with our producers is better for everyone. When we understand the food better, it allows us to talk about it better. It allows us to treat it better and respect the food more. And also, when people, you know, when people come to our shop, they expect us to be experts in the food that we carry, and we can't really do that unless we have a real relationship. And so much of what we carry is really traditional handmade food, which means it's made by people they're not made by you know, huge automated machines. It is made by real people, often with their hands, who put a lot of love into their stuff. And so making that connection with the people that actually produce the food to show that you are serious about what they're doing and that you care about their food just as much as they do, often will open doors, because it allows you opportunities to maybe hand select the batches that you get, or in some cases to get special lots of tea, or get single lots of tea that maybe would otherwise be a mixed blend. So creating those relationships and making them deep and continuing them for decades is one of the ways that we've had great success, because it allows us to get access to products that other people wouldn't, to continue to like represent things in a way that I think a lot of other shops just can't do. But that requires investment. That requires spending the money on sending me to Mississippi to come down here and make tea and get a deeper understanding. But this isn't just for me. I'm going to take all the photos and the videos and my experiences back to Michigan, and I'm going to tell everyone about it at Zingerman. So we're going to have some special classes where I share this information and the photos for the people who already know about the tea, but I think trying to put it in an even more real and like physical context, or, you know, not just like reading about it or watching a video on the internet, but having someone who you worked with for years tell you in intimate detail about what it was like. And I've learned so much. I've long since considered, you know, gotten over the idea that I'm any kind of expert. I think anyone who becomes an expert in something, the more you learn, the more you realize how little you actually know about something. And so people come to a class that I lead and they say, oh my gosh, you're such an expert about tea. And I mean, I do have the certification of like from the World Tea Academy and from the from the Tea Primer, but I've seen enough to see just how much there is in the world and just how much I don't know. And so that makes me hungry for more. That's why I wanted to come down here and to say, I don't know anything about tea. Tell me about what you do. Show me how you make it. Let's go pick the tea. Let's process the tea. Let me pepper you with lots of obnoxious and detailed questions. So, good. I worry sometimes
Timmy's
that I
used
ask
to
too
it.
many. I know. Sometimes I wonder that it's too much. But it's through doing this kind of work, literally on the ground, is how we get to the point where we can sell it a food and celebrate it. So I'm super excited to have Timmy's Tea. We have it at Zingerman's Deli. We also have it at the Zingerman's Roadhouse, which is our more full-service restaurant that is really focused on American food. So kind of with the idea of like the classic Roadhouse restaurant where you pull in for a great meal off the interstate, but to an elevated kind of level. So we're doing a lot of like classic Southern food, so shrimp and grits, or really great fried chicken, and other things like that. Or we just had gumbo and jambalaya on the menu. If you're serving those foods and you have tea on the menu, I don't think you can get around having Mississippi tea on your menu. And it was, as soon as I found out about this, it was just immediately like, this is the perfect fit. We need to have this tea. Assuming this is before I tasted it. So I was like, assuming that it's amazing, we need to have this tea. And as soon as I tasted it, I was sending text messages and saying, we got to taste this tea. You need to get this tea on. So we worked really hard with Timmy to get this on, and we love it so much that we designed our own label and artwork to celebrate it even more. So we don't try to pretend it's anyone else's tea. We say it's made by Timmy and Jason here in Mississippi by the Great Mississippi Tea Company. We don't try to give it a different name, but we do give it some extra fancy art because we have some amazing artists. And then I decided to write some beautiful copy and tasting notes that I think elevated a little bit. I'm really excited. I can't wait to get more of our tea served. One of my big goals this year is to get the green tea on the menu at the Roadhouse restaurant. Right now they just have the Black Magnolia. And to get the Black Magnolia on the menu as a sweet tea, which we currently don't have. And it really needs to be there.
I think it's phenomenally special how you talk about, knowing your producers, because consumers want to know, like, their farmer,
Yes.
So you're essentially capturing the same thing. You're a middleman, but at the same time, you're making sure that you're the middleman that knows the farmer. You're the middleman that knows the producer. And not everybody has the opportunity to get to know the farmer. Not everybody can come to Mississippi and do what you're doing. But you're doing that for the people of Michigan, which is phenomenal. And for Timmy, it's always been a big part of his journey to be out there, to share openly and honestly what it's like to be a tea grower in the USA. All right, awesome. So what we didn't talk about though is how people can get your product. Because you can actually, even if you're in California, you can get your cheese in California.
So I work for Zingerman's Deli, but in the Zingerman's community of businesses, we also have an arm called Zingerman's Mail Order. And we ship most of our foods nationwide, including Alaska and Hawaii, although there are more restrictions for those locations. And of course, unfortunately, there are different shipping rates because it has to go so much further. But you can order any of these cheeses. Some of them are in the regular catalog of Zingerman's Mail Order. There are some that are only officially available at the deli, but if it's a food we have at the deli and it's something that we know that we can ship, we'll send it to you at your house. Cheese, this time of year, as you can probably see, it's getting a little bit hot and a little bit melty in the Mississippi heat. We'll have to go with expedited shipping and warm weather care. But in the winter months, hard cheeses like most of these can be shipped for flat rate. So it's as much cheese as you want and other goodies for one price for the whole box of goodies. So if you're shipping one thing, it's kind of expensive. If you're getting a whole bunch of stuff, it's not very much to ship. So we ship our bread, we ship the cheese, we ship tea, of course, because that's really easy to send. And it's for a lot of people who they come to Ann Arbor for school to go to the University of Michigan. They come to Zingerman's, they fall in love with our food, and then they go off and do something else with their life and their career, and they move away, but they miss our food. And so we had enough people asking that's really why Zingerman's Mail Order was created, is because we had enough people calling saying, I miss your food, can you send it to me? And so we started doing it.
I can attest to that. It is really good. They fed me while I was there.
Yeah.
We had posted pictures of that. It looked amazing.
So we're happy to, if you don't live in Michigan and you can't come see us in person at the deli, we're happy to send you some amazing food wherever you live, as long as you're in the U.S. Sadly, we do not ship to Canada currently.
Aww.
Maybe someday. You'll have to ship it to your relatives just across the border and, go make a little trip across and come back or something, so.
Timmy, we're hanging out here. We're hanging out with Jackson, and we were just doing some filming. And in a sidebar conversation, Timmy, you were talking about a funny story that I really want you to share with your followers. It involves tea and beans. Give it up. What's the story?
So, we have a really Backyard and Burgers here. They did a thing with us for a while, and all of that. And Dory, who's one of the owners and everything of that, her mother got really big into our tea and all of that. So she'd brought her, or well, I think it's a mother-in-law, brought her and to the store here on the farm. And there was a couple of teas we were out of already for the year because it was after season and everything. And they were getting some stuff, and I wasn't paying attention to what she was doing, but I used to have bags, just like our normal bags here, that, as you can see when we do a lot of filming, we lay them down, or you'll see them blowing around and everything. So I used to fill a bag with no tea in it, but I just put beans in it, so that it would actually stay, and I didn't have to worry about the wind blowing it over. And I used those at farmers markets and stuff too. And they were always on the bottom shelf, where no tea is, it's just they were down there with the rest of the junk, and she was here, and we were out of one of the teas and everything, and I wasn't paying attention, and I guess she saw it and thought, oh, it's just an extra bag he doesn't know we have, so she picked it up. And a couple days later, I get a phone call from Dory, and she's like, I got a question for you. And I'm like, sure, what's going on? And she's like, we got it was Mississippi mud. And she said, we got a Mississippi mud, but it's beans in the bag and not tea. Did we win some kind of prize or something, or what's up? And I'm like, oh my God, Dory. I'm like, your mom picked up one of my farmer's market bags. It's my display bag. And she busted out laughing, and she's like, oh my goodness. And I'm like, but who knew? Wasn't paying attention. She thought, well, maybe it was some contest going on.
Bag of beans.
Bag of beans. Win a prize.
Timmy and the beanstalk. Thank you for sharing. Jackson, tell us a little bit about what the reaction has been in Ann Arbor when people come across the Great Mississippi Tea Company's tea in your business.
For a lot of people, it's kind of surprise. There will be over browsing the tea section, and they'll maybe ask me like, oh, what should I try? And I always say, like, check out these two. These teas are produced in Mississippi, like grown, processed, everything right there. And for most people, they're like, wait, what? Mississippi? They make tea there? And understandably say, yeah, it's incredible. But what was really, so we've done an event where we invited Timmy up, we tasted the tea, we served it, both the Black Magnolia and the Mississippi Queen. We steeped them twice so that people could taste how the tea changes from one steeping to the next. We paired it with a little bit of like tea cake. We had some nuts, we had some bread, and then we taught cheese. We also we did, and then we had Timmy tell the story of how the Great Mississippi Tea Company came to be, how they grow their tea, how they produce it, and so we had this whole kind of like focused tasting event around celebrating the tea. And I'm hoping to have another one this fall once you're done with your season, when you're just go for months on end. But a really fun thing happened that I didn't even know about until I got here, is that a lady came in, shopped for tea, bought some of the Mississippi tea at the deli, and then ended up coming down here for a tour to come see the farm because she'd had our tea, or had the tea at the deli. And I just think that's the kind of thing that we want to be doing, is that we're, by representing the tea amazingly, we're helping to support you as a producer in two different ways, both by buying your tea, but then also helping people to come down here to see the farm and to, get more of that like excitement and like word of mouth. And, I think the more that people see how the tea is made, the more they'll appreciate it and understand why it's so special and why it costs what it does. Because, great tea is not cheap, but it's also not as expensive as you think. So Ari, one of the guys who started Zingerman's back in 1982, calls tea in one of his books an affordable luxury. And I think that's one of the best ways to think about great tea, is that you can have a tea that is world class for under 20 bucks. How many other foods in the world can you have that you could say are world class for 20 bucks?
Right.
And so, and the other thing too is that from coming here and for myself making tea with you, it's the same experience as I had when I made cheese at the Zingerman's Creamery. It's a lot of work, and you realize how much work goes into every bag of tea, and suddenly it becomes an even more ridiculous value. Both of them take so much handwork and washing and cleaning and change and all of those things, that when it comes to it, you're like, wait, that's all this cost for this thing of tea after all that work I did? Man, that's incredible. Which I want to, if you ever come down and make tea with Timmy, you will never think tea is expensive ever again.
We do love the connectivity. It's like small businesses building together kind of thing. Like, you're thriving, Timmy's thriving, you're thriving because of the teamwork, and it's not a couple that was meant to be, but has become, like, because you think about it, like, I'm sorry, but a deli is not the first place I would think of as a tea house, right?
No, so Zingerman's Deli is kind of an oddity. We are inspired, like the original concept was a Jewish deli. So the guys that started Zingerman's originally, Ari and Paul, missed going to Jewish delis. Ari is from Chicago, Paul's from Detroit. They wanted that experience in Ann Arbor. And so that was kind of the idea behind it. But as they grew, they really wanted to start carrying really great food that was, traditional and full flavored. And as they, built into that came into, Ari was a tea lover. He wanted to carry great tea. And so the first one that we ever started really getting into is Darjeeling First Flush. And we still every year select a Darjeeling First Flush, not always from the same garden, but we always have one on our shelf that we love because it's sort of like one of the first things we did in tea. But the whole idea behind the deli is like, when, a lot of people come to us just to have a sandwich, but they also come for our incredible cheese counter and our amazing selection of olive oils and vinegars and jams and preserves and honeys and other foods that are amazing, that might just be either something you've never had before or something that is familiar, but it's somehow way better than you've ever had before. And that's for what keeps a lot of people coming back. And so, although you might not think of a deli as a place to get a cup of tea, we also, right next door to our deli, and as part of our seating section, we have our cafe, the next door. It's right next door to Zingerman's, hence the name. And so, in a cafe, it's a perfect place to have a cup of tea or a pot of tea with friends. And so for the folks who are hanging out for longer and, not just having lunch, but want to have a more kind of long experience that's relaxed, offering an amazing cup of tea is something that comes naturally to that. And so having an amazing American tea on our menu is something that I think is just wonderful.
It's brilliant, actually. I mean, tea is the most drank beverage in the world, really. Like, it's brilliant in that way, but it is also brilliant from the small business perspective of supporting, you've got a USA business, you've got a USA tea farm. Like, it's really, overall, it's people like to feel like they're being closer to home, right?
Yes.
All right, any final thoughts? Anything you want to, say? We'll start maybe Jackson with you.
Well, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed everything. Hopefully we'll see you again. And maybe I'll even see you up in Michigan. Or maybe we'll see your order come through at Zingerman's mail order. Or maybe not at all. Hopefully, if you ever come to Michigan, please come say hi at Zingerman's Deli. We're right in Carytown. And even if you don't buy anything, that's okay. I just love to see your face. The thing you should do, though, is make sure you come in and ask for a sample. Because you can ask for a taste of any and all of these cheeses when you come to the cheese counter. And, well, you might just leave with the cheese if you do that.
And Timmy, closing thoughts?
Yes. Thank Jackson for actually, coming and down to see us and be a part of the process, and bringing us such wonderful gifts and everything, and just the relationship that they've built, and going up there and being there with them and doing things, and now we're thinking about doing, having another class, or 2 or 3, however many, and just being available for that to happen. Because not every one of our partners are that way, and that's okay. Some people just need tea, and whatever. But those relationships that you build and everything else are always so wonderful. And I hope that any of our people that are ever up in Ann Arbor stop by, see them. Even if you just go in to say, "Hey, I saw you on the video," go see them. And everything. So, and come see us. I tell everybody all the time, if you're ever up that way, go by Zingerman's. If you're ever up that way, go by Zingerman's. I've even had some people from Canada coming through, our drivers with our Harvest Host thing. And I'm like, oh, well, where y'all going? And quite a few of them come back up that way. And I'm like, stop at Zingerman's. A couple of them have already done so.
Oh, that's great.
They're like, oh yeah, we know that. We go there every time.
Awesome. Thank you both for putting up with filming and recording and talking with us today. You guys will put this on all our channels. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.